Hi there, everyone. Recently finished in 10th place at regional with Salamangreat, so I thought I'd show the deck list, go over a bit of an analysis of my matchups, what worked well, what I'd change. I am currently abroad, so I don't have my deck to hand, which is why I'm using Dueling Book, but at least it makes it easier to see what the list is. So I'll just quickly go through the list and just kind of explain what cards did well, which ones didn't. Salamangreat is such a versatile deck that with so many variants topping, my analysis will have to just be kind of tailored to what performed well on the day and to my playstyle. So cards that didn't do well for me are likely to do well for other people. To begin with, we've got Jack Jaguar. So that's a really good card. Used him a lot to make Heat Soul. And to be honest, I didn't miss having more copies of him, so I'd probably keep him at 1, as he is super searchable. We've then got Salamangreat Falco. The same goes for Falco. This card was amazing in the grind game for recycling spells and traps to the field, or monsters to the hand for the next turn. And then Gazelle. Gazelle, obviously really good. Got my engine started. Nothing more to say on this really. Pairing Gazelle with X-Seed for Baguska, and Roar was incredibly strong all day. Most people couldn't out that combination. And then we've got 3 copies of Spinny. This was just an excellent card every time I saw it. It's just really versatile. It's a great discard. It's a 1-card link too, and it makes Stalio to help you extend. It's just always an extender. Then we've got Salamangreat Foxy. Also performed really well as both a normal summon, which I'd only use if I had follow-up for next turn and hand traps, or just as an extender and discard too. The extender effect to special summon itself and pop is really good for triggering Gazelle effect, but it's also really good for getting rid of floodgates. I think I didn't use that effect too often, but I did use it on a zombie world, which was very helpful. I then got 3 copies of Parallel Exceed. This performed really well both going first and second. Baguska was really strong, although I found that better players were able to out it, so it was important to try pair Baguska with Roar. But going second, it forced negates fairly well, as my opponent knew that if I did get my 2 Exceed on the field, I'd just make Baguska and then negate their whole board, because most of my matchups weren't really link-based. I did brick on it a little bit with hand traps, so in my updated list I've actually replaced 1 Balinx for an Almirage, which will allow me to normal summon hand trap, go into Almirage and trigger the Exceed, and that way I can sort of also restart my Salad engine. Next I've got 3 copies of Flame Buffalo. I only saw this card twice in my opening hand throughout the entire event with a good discard, which was frustrating. I also drew it deep into games quite a lot with no discard, so it mostly ended up being a lackluster normal summon. I have 9 strong discards to pair it with in the deck, so I think it was just bad luck on the day. It meant going second I struggled more as well because I couldn't dig into my deck more. However, my opponent didn't know I was upping no good Cyberse monsters with it, and so for example against Despia, they wouldn't Mirror Jade my Buffalo and summon, as they didn't want to just let me draw and then potentially extend using a Will or Gazelle, because again, they also don't know how many copies of Will I play or if I've hard opened a Gazelle. And this gave me a chance to activate Exceed or start my Sound Engine in hand, so Buffalo gave me a lot of value in that regard. Next, I've got the 1 copy of Sea Archiver. Top decking this in Game 3, Round 3 actually won me that match, so big fan of it just based on that. Archiver was a really good extender all day, and it can also be used to make Heat Soul in certain lines as well, which means you don't have to waste your Lingeribo. Next we have Formwood Skipper. This card was insane all day. I'm so glad I played him. I would often open hands with a Silent Mining and no other good summon, so I'd just search for Formwood Skipper and end on a Baguska plus a Balinx, so I'd have a strong board and follow up for next turn. Skipper is also a 1-card OTK too, which came up because you use search Exceed, then you can make the update jammer. He just adds so much consistency and power to the deck that I just really like it as a one-of. For the hand traps, we got 3 Ash Blossom. Next to Imperm, I'd say this was the most effective hand trap all day. I find that every game I'm able to recycle this with Wolf, I win. Against Despia, I'd always just save it for Branded Fusion, as this worked well, as I didn't lose a single game to Despia all day. In round 4, we ended up in quite a grindy game, and the Despia player summoned the Chimera, and I was left with a dilemma of do I Ash the effect and save my board, or do I save it in case they have Branded Fusion in hand? Because I had follow-up for next turn, so I just had to make sure I survived this turn. So I decided to hold the Ash, and turns out they were holding the Branded Fusion, and I Ashed it, and then OTK'd next turn. Then we've got 3 Droll and Luckbird. Main decking this surprised a lot of players, and it won me my first match against Trigbrigade Lyrilusc. That being said, I didn't see it much in my opening hands, and drawing it later wasn't great at all, as it's just completely ineffective at that point. But overall, it was an okay option, but possibly would have been better in the side deck. Then got Valor. It's just a decent hand trap, really good against most of the decks it went up against. Then we move on to Ghost Ogre. I mained this because I was expecting a lot of Brave, Therion, and Thunder, but I didn't come across any of that at all at the event. So this card really was lackluster all day as a main deck option. It only really served as like a minor inconvenience for my opponent. The best use that it really had was hitting a Moye in a Swordsoul game, but they just have the extenders to play through it anyway. On reflection, I should have definitely mained DD Crow, as it just hit way more decks. So that was a bit annoying. Onto the spells, I've got 2 Signet Mining. I like this at 2. I can't remember seeing it twice in the same hand, which is nice, but I would definitely consider cutting a hand trap count and bumping this to 3 for consistency. But still, 2 is okay, but I think 3 is slightly better. We then also got 2 Desires. I barely saw this, but it was great when I did. I found that I could still play no matter what I banished, so it's just a really good card for Salad. I'll then play 3 Circle. This is an amazing card. Opening it in multiples is fine as well, because you'd search on your own turn in the draw phase, or you'd hold it for Nibiru if you've opened really well, and then you'd set the extra one and use it on your opponent's turn for a follow-up search, if maybe the first one got ashed, for example, or you'd use it again to protect your Sunlight Wolf. Banishing effects are quite prevalent right now with cards like Mirror Jade, so Circle's second effect really does come up quite a lot now. Next we've got Sanctuary. I only remember opening this once, which was really lucky, but I lost that game because I bricked on Sanctuary, Roar, Will, Exceed, and Hand Trap, which is an awful hand. I banished it a few times, but it never really hurt. Then we've got Will. I find this card to be less and less useful as time goes on. I have now dropped this from my list, and I haven't missed it. I bricked on it just as much as I used it in the tournament, even though I only ran 1. Well, I do think that that's just bad luck. I didn't find that it had many helpful applications. I never needed it to OTK, and although we always worry about Nibiru, statistically you will not get hit by it as much as you think, and that was the case at the tournament. I think I only got hit 4 times by Nibiru, and I won most of those games. But I know a lot of players still play this at 2 or 3, so I think the effectiveness of it depends on your matchups, the way you play, and just kind of your list in general. For the traps, I play 3 Imperm. This was an amazing hand trap, helped a lot going second into an established board, or just adding more interruption going first. My only gripe with it is that when I would draw off Heat Soul on my opponent's turn, but it's still an amazing card for the deck. Then I play 1 Rage and 1 Roar. I think this is becoming the standard ratio, and I do like it. It means you don't brick on them, but you do occasionally see them. And seeing both of them at the same time isn't really necessary when you play so many hand traps and kind of other interruptions such as Baguska. So I like those ratios. For the extra deck, it's in a weird order down here, but I'll just go through it. So I'll only mention the cards that are kind of not standard or that I've changed. So there's 3 Balinks down here, but I definitely changed that to 2, and I'd run 1 Almirage. And since I've done that, it's been working out quite well. A problem I came across was opening a hand trap. Say we're going to the grind game, I open a hand trap and Exceed, or just a hand trap but no normal summon. So running Almirage allows you to trigger your Exceed, but it also means that if you have Salamangreat monsters in the grave, such as Jaguar or Spinny, then you can start your Salad engine all over again. And I never find that I banish both Balinks if you kind of manage your resources properly. Another card to talk about would be Phoenix. This was okay, but I found it was a bit obsolete given that I ran 3 Foxy, and the only cards really worth popping are the face-up kind of floodgates like Zombie World. There can be only 1, so I definitely swapped this out for something else. And we've got Heat Soul. This card is so good. It just gives the deck so much gas. I did misplay with this card so badly though. What I was doing for some reason was waiting until the end phase of my turn to use its effect, and for some reason I thought this was a good idea because it meant I dodged Veiler, but if anything, baiting a Veiler is good because it means I've got less interruption when I go for an OTK, for example. Most of the time this misplay didn't hurt, but I did draw an Imperm or 2 in my end phase. I was just don't understand why I did that, but oh well, we learn. And then the Baguska, I want to talk about that because this was just such a good card going first and going second. The only problem is that Swordsoul doesn't have as hard a timeouting as you'd think because of the Tenyi engine, and Swordsoul is where my 2 losses came from. So I finished X2 out of 7 rounds, and both losses were to Swordsoul. I lost to the guy that won the event and 6th place as well, so they were both very close games. It's just the Swordsoul deck can just go really well into the Salamangreat board. It's just a very resilient deck. I think I played incorrectly against them on reflection. But so the side deck as well. DD Crow, this should have been in the main. I don't know why I kept this in the side. I should have just got rid of Ogre, added Crow, and maybe swapped in some other sort of hand traps. 3 Nibiru, I didn't use this at all day because the only deck that it was good against was Swordsoul, and I won both my die rolls against Swordsoul. Went first, lost game 1, and then in game 2 I decided to go first, so I put my D barriers and thought D barrier, Baguska, several hand traps, that's enough, but it just wasn't. Prohibit Snake, this never came up, but I put it in here because no one really expects it, and going into time it's really useful because if you're both low on time, your opponent will often just try and put like, you know, a few hundred damage on board. They won't really be concerned with setting the board up, so they might try and make like a mid-range 2000 kind of link monster to smash into your Sunlight Wolf, and then you just chain Prohibit Snake, and then their whole turn, their whole like strategy is just busted because they've misplayed kind of to build up to that. But yeah, it didn't come up. Then we got 3 Cosmic Cyclone. This card is okay, but I would definitely swap it out for Twin Twisters because trading 1-for-1 just isn't that great. I mean, I know it stops Eldlich from recurring itself, but this deck has such an easy matchup against Eldlich that it can recur itself all it wants, it's still not going to beat you. But Twin Twisters is definitely more effective because, for example, back row decks, Super Poly is quite prevalent, so you want to make sure you hit that. There was a game where my opponent had 2 back row and they used Cosmic, banished it, and the other was a Super Poly, and my Linger Evo and access code got taken away. I still won the game, but it's just annoying. Harpy's Feather Duster, really good card, nothing more to say. Dimensional Barrier, really good card as well. Won me so many games against Despia. Even going second, it's really good because Despia really does struggle to OTK. So if I open up a lot of hand traps, they've got Mirror Jade, I open up hand traps and I open up D Barrier and a few salad cards, and I can't extend past the banish. What I'll do is I'll just set the D Barrier, interrupt their play so they can't OTK, and then on the following turn, I'll activate D Barrier, which would be turn 3. So that means their Mirror Jade effects are turned off, but also they can't Super Poly, Branded Lost, or anything like that. So really good for that. And then 1 red Reboot, just really good card. Won me a few games as well. It just kind of guarantees OTK if all you're facing is 5 back row. But yeah, I'll just quickly go through what my matchups were as well. So round 1 was Trigbrigade Lyrilusc, which I won. Then it was Eldlich Zombie Despia, which I also won. Then I played a Trap Tenyi deck. Round 4 was Branded Despia, which I won. In this one, we got deck checked for a good 30 minutes. I have no idea what was going on. We both got a PP minor for a card that they kept finding. For him, it was Callbind. For me, it was a Spinny. But what I should have done is taken the Spinny out, and then because I've got 3 Spinnies, so I don't know how they proved it was the same one. But anyway, so we had to wait for ages, so it means we lost our lunch break. But I eventually managed to win this one 2-0, and I felt quite sorry for the guy because it meant his run lasted a good like hour and a half, and he lost. So then round 5 was against Swordsoul. I lost this one 2-0 against the guy that won the event. Round 6, Branded Despia again. I beat this one after first game lasted about half an hour. He finally scooped after it was just a really good game. And then round 7, lost to Swordsoul as well. I just misplayed quite a lot in this last one. I think against Swordsoul I played a bit too aggressively. I should have kind of tried to take them down into a simplified game state, going to a grind game or something. But yeah, overall it was really good fun. I got my invite for World Championship qualifiers. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.